recently placed a moratorium on new mink farms and a cap on mink reproduction. This comes after several farmed mink in that province tested positive for COVID-19. Now, according to the World Health Organization, COVID-19 can mutate in mink, and those variants can be transmitted back to humans. Earlier this year, Denmark and the Netherlands destroyed all of their farmed mink because of the COVID-19 outbreaks. There are more than 40 mink farms here in Nova Scotia. So far, there have been no reported cases of COVID in mink or on any of those mink farms. Still, people are rightly concerned. Savoy is an animal rights activist in Nova Scotia. He spoke with Information Morning's Fliss McGregor.
What are your concerns with Nova Scotia's mink farms in terms of COVID-19?
Mink are basically the perfect setup for the spread and the transfer of disease between animal to animal. They get COVID-19 just like we do, and they're immunocompromised because they're raised in these cages. They're not out in the wild like other animals, and it spreads really easy because the cages are so small and they're side by side. That's why it's a real concern. It's just basically, especially during the height of COVID-19 here, you had basically, while we were off social distancing and masking, they were the equivalent of, stadiums full of people, considering how they get this disease just like we do.
So is your concern about COVID-19 on the mink farms mostly about, that the minks could suffer from having COVID-19, or are you also concerned about public health, like human health?
Yeah, it's a public health. When the outbreaks first started in early spring in the EU, in the Netherlands first, they realized right away this is a public health concern. With Denmark, especially, Denmark's the number one producer in the world, or they were until they shut it down because of the COVID-19 outbreaks there. They started going from human to mink, and then they mutated. There was a variant in Denmark that was going back to people, and the UK actually shut down transport. Denmark realized right away they did the right thing. They realized it was public health concern. The vaccine, the studies were showing that the vaccine wasn't going to be effective versus this variant. It's something that just happened in BC that's happened there too. They started capturing mink in the area. They escape all the time. It's a normal occurrence for mink farms. Anyone who tells you here in Nova Scotia that lives will tell you that they escape all the time. So they started capturing them here to see if COVID-19 was spreading, and sure enough, here in BC just last week, they found some animals, escaped mink farm animals that have COVID-19. So there's an extremely serious thing, right? You could be living with it out in wild populations from this point on.
You identify yourself as an animal rights activist, and you've been hoping that you could get these mink farms throughout Nova Scotia shut down over the years. So how much is this just, a tactic for you to speak out about the human health aspects of transmitting COVID to mink on mink farms when we know that context?
Obviously, the cruelty is there. 80% of people in this poll in September, 80% of Canadians are in favor of banning it. So it should be banned. The Netherlands banned it for the cruelty alone, right? Then you look at the other issues associated with it. Human health is, it's a no-brainer at this point. They should all be gone, right?
Savoy is an animal rights activist in Nova Scotia. Fliss also spoke with Matt Moses. He's a mink producer here in Nova Scotia and also president of both the Nova Scotia Mink Breeders Association and the Canada Mink Breeders Association.
So, Matt, could you just explain to me what kind of protocols are in place to make sure that the mink in Nova Scotia aren't getting infected with COVID-19?
Anyone who feels ill or displays symptoms is asked to not come to work. The rest, we have been issued COVID test kits where we can test individuals. It takes about 15 minutes on arrival to the farm. And then the ones who remain for the day, we can wear proper PPE, which protects the human and mink interaction.
What other measures are you taking? For example, vaccinating the animals. Is that available to you?
Yes. Like the human vaccine, its rollout is slower than we would like, but as vaccine becomes available, we are administering the vaccine in a 2-shot regimen, much like the human population, to protect the mink. And once fully vaccinated, they are protected much like we are from COVID.
Okay, and what about the workers themselves? Are there any restrictions in place that workers, people who work on mink farms, must be vaccinated against COVID-19?
We've had the recommendations come through from the chief veterinary medical officer, from the CBO's office, and from the association has made strong recommendations starting close to a year ago on whom can enter the facilities, and we've recommended that all folks working with the mink have had 2 doses. And most have, and most farmers will only let those who've been vaccinated work closely with the mink. Still requires all of the same PPE as it is still. It reduces the chance, but it doesn't eliminate the potential.
How do you respond when you hear what's happened in British Columbia? What's your take on that, having a moratorium on new farms and population cap?
We've been working very closely with the British Columbia government for some time now, and they're taking a very careful, calculated approach with the COVID-19 and the mink, and we support this. We've been adhering to these new rules that they're rolling out, as well as others, and we feel that it has been highly effective. As since they started rolling out the new rules, there's only been 1 additional farm become positive in the last 6 months. We feel it's been an effective approach. Here in Canada, we have a very different situation than many other countries where our farms are spread over such a geographical area, and so it enables us to be a little safer as most mink farms are removed from dense human populations.
Matt Moses is president of both the Nova Scotia Mink Farmers Association and the Canada Mink Breeders Association.
Since we are talking about vaccines, kind of indirectly there, keep